Okay, Michemo, just give me a couple of seconds. I want to finish setting up a little bit. Running a couple of minutes behind. But in the meantime, can somebody just send me a message in the chat just so you can let me know that you can hear me good? I don't need to send out one message. Can everybody hear me well? Okay. Okay, in order to send me a chat, you have to log in. Or just let me know if the sound is coming in clearly. And just give me a couple of minutes and we will be getting started. Okay. So the sound is good for y'all? All right. All right. Okay, me chiamo ene AKANFO NANASOM da me dinde Odwirafo Kwesi Nehem Ptah Akhan. That means today is AKANFO NANASOM Day. My name is Odwirafo Kwesi Nehem Ptah Akhan. I am the Odwirafo of the Kwamu Mine, Amarukai Tifimu, the Akwamu Nation in North America. So we have had our full series of the Akradinbosom, the Abosom in Akan culture who govern the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies that govern the Akan 7-day week. So we went through all 11. What we want to do today is talk about Asaase Afua and Asaase Yaa, the Earth Mother divinities. They're connected, of course, with Asaase is the Earth, our planetary home. So even though they are not one of the Akradinbosom, because they're the final planet that we deal with in the solar system, we wanted to deal with them as well, and clear up some confusion and talk about the nature and function of these two divinities. Before we get to start dealing with that, are there any questions from the previous session on the Akradinbosom Amen that we dealt with last week? Any questions about that? Okay, and let me send out one message right quick. Well, some of the information that we go over today can be found, some of the foundational information can be found in the article entitled Odomankoma ATMU Kopa. Now, all of it isn't going to be in there, but there's certain basic foundational information that you will find in that article that will enhance, which you can download it now and you can look at some of the information as we're going through the piece. But it'll give you some basic information about these two female abosom. So, Asaase means earth in the Akhan language. Asaase Afua and Asaase Yaa are the two Earth Mother Abosom. There's not just one Earth Mother Abosom, there are two. They're sisters. They're children of Nyankopon and Nyankonton, who is Ra and Rait, the creator and the creatress, and they have their own functions that complement one another. Now, you'll often hear about or read about, whether it's from academics writing about Akan culture or traditionalists talking about Akan culture, talking about ritual and things like that, you will often hear about Asaase Afua being venerated as the Earth Mother by some people. For example, the Fanti, a major Akan group who live further south, closer to the coast, they call the Earth Mother Asaase Afua. And then you'll find, for example, one of the largest Akan groups, the Asante, refer to the Earth Mother as Asaase Yaa. Now, of course, if you've been dealing with these webcasts and checking them out, you will see that Afua and Yaa are Kradin. They are soul names. So the Earth Mother has soul names, has a soul name. Both of the Earth Mothers have a soul name. But what you often hear about, what you often read about, is that one group calls the Earth Mother Asaase Afua or Afua or Afia, and the other group, some other groups, call her Asaase Yaa, and their explanation will be, when you hear about it, read about it, or whatever, that some believe that the Earth was born on a Thursday, or some believe that Earth was born on a Friday. Therefore, the ones who believe the Earth was born on a Friday, they call her Asaase Afua, and the others call her Asaase Yaa. That's not accurate. The reason that there's an Asaase Afua, or an Asaase Yaa is because there are two abosom. You will also hear some people and read some people talking about there are two Earth Mother Abosom, specifically people who often quote the Odwirafo, the spirit of disorder, Meyerowitz, who was writing about Akan culture and wrote a lot of information that turns out to be inaccurate. In some of her work, you'll find certain clips on the internet, and some people have, gathered the material where she talks about Asaase Afua is the fertile earth, and Asaase Yaa is the barren earth. And that's why there are two divinities. And that's not really accurate either. So, at least on one hand, she got some information from somebody in Akan culture, letting her know that there are two female earth abosom, but the characterization of just fertile and barren, that's not accurate. That skews who these abosom actually are. So we're going to go into detail about who Asaase Afua and Asaase Yaa are, what their functions are, and how they came into being, and their relationship to us. In order to do that, we want to go back, we want to do a Sankofa and go back to our ancient ancestral cosmology coming from Ancient Khanit land, which is Ancient Knesset, Ancient Nubia, so we can get some more perspective on where Asaase Afua and Asaase Yaa come from, and how we have always dealt with them as two Earth Mother Abosom, two Earth Mother divinities, and it goes from Ancient Khanit all the way through contemporary Akani or Akan culture, and it's really unchanged. When we work, not only study this kind of information, but actually work with these abosom and communicate with them and include them in Oshue and Mpaibo and libation and deal directly with them, then we will understand who they are. And the Nsamanfo will fill us in about, details about who they are and why they're important. The abosom themselves will fill us in. So let's get into some of that information. All right. So first we're going to deal with the cosmology, which some of it we have gone over before as far as the creation of the universe, but we want to give some context to where Asaase Afua and Asaase Yaa come from. So, of course, we talk about the Great Mother and the Great Father. Amen is the Great Father. Amenet is the Great Mother. Of course, Amen is Nyame and Akan, and Amenet or Amenat is Amewa or Nyamewa. So Amen, Amenet, Nyame, Nyamewa, of course, are the same. But Amen and Amenet, who function together as the Father and Mother, the Great Supreme Being, when they decided to create the universe and continuously create, expand the universe, just like you can decide you're going to utilize your mind to create some geometric forms and images in the darkness of your consciousness right now. You can decide to do that. And once you make that decision, you employ your consciousness to generate an image within your mind that didn't exist before. Just the reason why you can do that is because Amen and Amenet have that capacity. When they first decided to create the universe, first they fashioned an image. They employed or first created their own Ka and Kayet, their own consciousness, a vehicle with which they can fashion forms, images, ideas out of no things or nothing. So they created the Ka and Kayet, their own consciousness, and they employed that consciousness to generate images or entities of what will come into being. Once they generate those images, just like you generate an image about what you want to create, and then you give energy to make that thing happen. Just like they first generated those images, they created the Ka and Kayet, the great soul, male and female, two Abosom, two forces, and they use that force to generate those images, that intelligence. Then they began to expand and contract to give energy, life, activity to those images. And that expansion and contraction was the creation of a set of twin divinities, Hehu and Hehut, which within our bodies becomes our primordial breath, Hehu and Hehut, male and female entities of expansion and contraction. And when Hehu and Hehut began to expand and contract within the black substance of space, which is the actual shrine of the consciousness of Inyamewa, because Inyamewa are the great hidden or invisible being, they decided to form their own consciousness, whose shrine is the great black substance of space, and they want to give energy to those forms, Hehu and Hehut, the expansion and contraction. And Hehu and Hehut began to expand and contract. These two forces created by Inyamewa and Inyame, Amen and Amenet and Amen, began to expand and contract within the black substance, causing some of the black substance to begin to be fluid or wave, just like a wavy line, which is the birth of Nu and Nut. Now, just like we talked about before, if you look at a water in a pot on a stove, it's just a flat, formless surface. When you invest heat into that water, first it begins to wave, before it begins to boil, the expansion and the contraction causes it to wave. And then once the waves continue to move rapidly, because the heat is increasing, then they begin to move so rapidly it becomes a boil, and then spheres form out of that wave action, that expansion and contraction. It's the very same process from the beginning of creation. Amen and Amenet create Ka and Kayet, the great black substance of space, the shrine for their consciousness. Then they began to expand and contract within that black substance, that black unformed substance. And that expansion and contraction first manifests as two masculine and feminine wave energy principles, and that is Nu and Nut. And when Nu and Nut continue to vibrate and they unite and begin to birth spheres in the black substance spheres, those spheres that carry that heat are Ra and Rait, the shrines for Ra and Rait, and that those spheres eventually birth light. And that's that fire and heat, which manifests as light, is the manifestation physically of Ra and Rait operating through that divine fire. So you have Amen and Amenet, Ka and Ka'et, Hehu and Hehut, Nu and Nut, and then they give birth to the fire and light that will eventually pierce the darkness for the first time in creation. And then there's separation between light and darkness, and now you have creation beginning. As Ra and Rait operating through the divine fire and light moving through the blackness, they create separation of various aspects of the blackness. Separation of black bodies, black spheres within the black substance. Now, if you look at astronomy, you look at physics, they refer to stars as black bodies. That's the designation that they give stars because of the nature of their origin. They come from that black substance, that black plasma that is now called dark energy or dark matter, and they're referred to as black bodies. It's the same thing in our ancient cosmology, which is where they got that information from. Ra and Rait moving through the black substance of space, that great black plasma of Ka and Ka'et, created a series of black spheres or black bodies which became the first stars. And of course, some of those stars had projectiles or emanations that would later become the planets that would orbit those stars, and this is the creation of solar systems. Now, one of those spheres, those smaller spheres, those black spheres that came out of the greater black sphere, the star, one of those smaller spheres, of course, is our planet, Asaase Afua, Asaase Yaa. Now, when Ra and Rait began to move through the primordial black sphere, which would later be called Asaase, their energy expanding and contracting within that black sphere caused separation and development within that sphere. Of course, the lighter elements rise to the surface and the denser elements go to the core. And the energy of Ra and Rait moves through the core, and they give birth to, through their own life, divine living energy, a portion of that divine living energy is deposited within the core, and the core becomes a shrine for some of the energy of Ra and Rait, and they direct Ptah and Sekhmet to operate through the inner core of the planet. Ptah and Sekhmet are two divinities that fashion. So Ptah is called the great fashioner. You'll see Ptah mummified, standing like this. He often has on his skull cap. They call him the great artisan, the fashioner, the great divine craftsman, excavator, architect, and so forth. He's mummified because he's within the core, the inner core of Earth. He's in the inner core of the sun, the inner core of stars and other planets and so forth. And Sekhmet is also the female fire operating within that inner core. They work together as husband and wife. So when Ra and Rait invest Ptah and Sekhmet within the core, their expansion and contraction within the core is the basis of the thermodynamics that give birth to form of the planet Earth. So that movement within the core, you'll find that the core, there's an inner core, an inner core, there's an outer core, and then of course you have the mantle, lower and upper mantle, and then you have the crust, which is where we walk upon and so forth. So you have Ptah and Sekhmet in the core. Their expansion and contraction begins to develop thermodynamics, which give birth to form. The rotation of the inner core in connection with the rotation of the earth and its movement around the Atem, around the sun, creates the earth's magnetic field. And we talked about Yaa and Abba previously, the two poles of the magnetic field. So, and then we also talked about the axis last week, which is Amen, Men, and Het Heru. So, as Ptah is operating through the center, and Sekhmet is operating through the center, that expansion and contraction and movement starts to develop that primordial earth. Iron is at the center of the core, it solidifies, but then the outer core is more of a liquid iron because of the different movements, because of the thermodynamics. Certain things cool, certain things expand, then the mantle develops, the lower mantle, then the upper mantle, and then the crust. So what you have is Ptah and Sekhmet. Then on top of that, you'll have the mantle, which is Atem, Iusaaset, Hetepet, and Iusaaset, Nebt, Hetepet. And then you have the lower mantle, which is Shu and Tafnut. And then you have the crust, which is Geb and Nut. And then Geb and Nut, earth and sky, give birth to Asar, Aset, Set, and Nebt Het, which is the black soil substance, the river waters of earth, the red soil substance, and the rain waters of earth, and also the dew. So you have from the core all the way to the surface. You'll see when they talk about the lineage of the divinities, and they say, well, Ptah fashioned the world, and then Atem sat on, Ptah fashioned the world and created a hill. Atem sits on the hill. He gives birth to Shu, Tafnut. Shu and Tafnut give birth to Geb and Nut. Geb and Nut give birth to Asar, Aset, Set, and Nebt Het. You'll find from the innermost core, through the mantle, upper, lower, and upper, and through the crust, and then of course the surface, you'll find that all these different divinities operate through these different layers. Now, we are not just anthropomorphizing the layers of the planet. The planet is not just a dead rock. Just like your body, there's a difference between your body and the body of a corpse. You have this, all the same things, only difference between you and the corpse is the corpse doesn't have a spirit that animates the body, that gives life to the organs and the organ systems and the vessels and so forth. It's the same thing with the earth, with the planet. It's not just a dead, rock floating around, because yes, there are different layers, geological layers, but there are abosom that operate through each layer, that carry the energy of each layer, animate each layer, and give life to each layer, and that's why the earth is a living entity. So we just want to get that through. Does anybody have any questions on that so far? Okay, so now once we went from black substance of space all the way through the black bodies, through our specific miniature black body, Earth, the core, mantle, crust, and so forth. Now, when you look in the text of, for example, what they call the, sometimes they'll say the Memphite theology, but really the text found on the Shabaka stone, talking about the cosmology often associated with Ptah, but there's more talked about it with regard to Ptah, Atem, Heru, Tahuti, Asar, Set, Heru, Set, Geb. Different divinities are spoken of in this particular text. So, talking about Ptah, he's the fashioner, he is the architect, he's the one at the center of the earth, fashioning, creating, and the expansion and contraction of Ptah and Sekhmet operating within the center of the earth is causing the earth to form. So, after the mantle is formed, the crust is formed, we talked about previously the earthquakes at the ocean, on the ocean floor, causing a portion of the earth's ocean floor to surge upward above the surface of the water. Now, as the earth is being formed, these different layers of the earth from the inner core all the way out to the crust, understand that the entire planet is covered by water. This is previous to any landmass. The earth is boiling, of course, and things are expanding and contracting. There's viscosity in the mantle. There's lava, there's plate tectonics, there's a lot of things going on, but the earth is covered by water. At some point, because of plate tectonics and because of the expansion and contraction of Ra and Rait, which light up and enliven the entire planet, including the abosom that are operating through these various layers, earthquakes on the ocean floor cause a portion of the ocean floor to surge up above the surface of the water. Now, of course, that first raised land is called Ka and Kaet, and then just like with everything that's created, Ra and Rait, everything created according to divine sanction, Ra and Rait move through that first raised Ka and Kaet. They are called Afu Ra and Afu Rait because they're moving inside Afu or matter. So they're called Afu Ra and Afu Rait, and they're moving through the Ka and the Kayet. So, of course, it's called Afuraka and Afurai Kayet, the land of the creator, the land of the creatress. So that first landmass has risen. Now, Ptah and Sekhmet are at the core of the earth. They're continuously fashioning. Right now, just at all times, they're constantly fashioning the earth from the core. They're constantly causing the thermodynamics generated from the core. Ptah fashions the shape of that primordial mound. He's the fashioner, right? So they talk about Ptah operating through the mound, fashioning the mound, and then they say Atem comes and sits on the primordial mound, and then they say Atem gives birth to Shu and Tefnut, and then Shu and Tefnut give birth to Geb and Nut, and so forth. Now, we show a picture of Atem, and in the article Odomankoma Atemu Kopa, we show Atem operating through the setting sun, and he's operating through the red disk of the setting sun. Just like he operates through the red disk setting in the boat, and you'll see the red sun setting. So sometimes when you look outside, when the sun is setting in the west, it looks like a red disk. Well, they show a picture of that red disk and Atem sitting inside the red disk, and then the sun is setting upon earth. And that's showing that solar energy that comes from the sun that penetrates the Earth Mother. Atem is within that setting energy. Not only is he inside the mantle, just like Ptah is at the core, the inner core of the earth, inner core of the sun, inner core of planets, Atem is also within the structure of other planets, and in the sun, the Atem, and so forth. So when he's in the setting sun, in that red disk, and the sun sets between two mountains on the horizon, you'll see the two mountains, and then you'll see the red sun setting there, and Atem is in there, so he's touching the ground. So here and one of the words, Atem, Atamai, it means red. Of course, it also means the one who completes, because Atem is the one who completes or brings things to a close, or the finisher. It also means hard, compact substance. It also means land. There's a meaning for land. What is all that saying? That when the sun sets, there's a completion of the day. The hard, compact substance is the completion of the formation of the earth. The redness is about the red sun, but it also has to do with the red portions of the earth. So this is where they get Atem or Adam, meaning red or ruddy. Also Adam, meaning the first male to show up on earth, because Atem is the first male abosom who touches the earth. When Ptah fashions that first raised land that rose up as the Khan Kayet, Afurai Kayet, the continent, then Ptah fashions that, and then they say Atem sets on the land that Ptah fashions. And when he sits on the land, sits on the primordial hill, then he creates Shu and Tefnut. So that land is fashioned, Atem completes it, hard, compact substance, finishes it, completes it, and then he sits on it, and then he gives birth to Shu and Tefnut. Now, here's the piece that the whites and their offspring begin to corrupt. When they say Atem is sitting on the first landmass, the first male abosom, the first male divinity, is sitting on the first raised land, and is about to create Shu and Tefnut, meaning giving a physical vehicle for Shu and Tefnut to operate through on the surface. Just like they can operate on the inside, they also operate through the surface. Just like you have solar energy on the outside, there's solar energy or heat on the inside. Just like Shu and Tefnut operate in the internal parts of the planet, they also operate externally. So he's giving them a vehicle, a shrine to operate through externally, so they can come from the inside out. Okay, so what they say is, well, the actual texts say, and you can read this in the Book of Knowing the Manifestations of Ra, and just different texts, but that's one of the most direct texts. You can also look in the pyramid text. The texts say that Atem brought into his mouth his own name. He used Hekal, meaning words of power, not necessarily mantras, but it's more than mantras, ritual prayer to affect change. And he connected with his Kahibit, which is, we talked about that before, the aura, took his aura as his wife, grasped her in his hand, embraced his aura, connected with it, united with it, and gave birth to Shu and Tafnut, the twins, Shu and Tafnut. Shu is the male, Tafnut is the female. They are abosom of expansion and contraction. Now, what the whites and their offspring will say is that Atem masturbated, swallowed his own seed, and spit out Shu and Tafnut. And then they associate masturbation with the creation of the world. Now, of course, this is not accurate, but they always attempt to infuse sexual deviance into Afura Kani culture. So when you look at the text, one of the reasons they say this is because the term Usa means to expand. It also means gladness, joy, and things like that. It also shows the hand. It says, I took my hand and united with my hand and connected with my kahibit. It also says it took my kahibit as a wife, but sometimes they skip over that part and just see the hand united with my hand and connected and gave birth and spit out Shu and Tafnut. Now here's the connection between the hand and why it doesn't have anything to do with masturbation. Asaase Yaa and Asaase Yaa, two divinities. We show those pictures in the article Odomankoma Atemu Kopa. We show a picture of Asaase, both Asaase divinities standing together. And then we show another picture of Atem, who is Odomankoma, Asaase Yaa, and then Asaase Hetepet, all sitting together as a triad. Now, these goddesses, these female abosom, were called in different respects the hand of Atem. They were called the hand. That was their descriptive title, the hand. Why would the females be called the hand? In Ancient Khanit, sometimes we would say that, the male has two hands and the female has three. And the third hand for the female is the vagina structure, because just like the two hands, it grasps. The reason why we refer to it that way is cosmological. When people are reproducing, it's not a notion of the female is just an empty vessel to be filled up with the seed of the male, and she's an inactive or passive participant, and the most important thing that we can be doing is procreating. In reality, she's an active participant, and her participation is equal in quality to the males. She's active. So just like the ovum is magnetic, it's not just that the sperm goes and the ovum is just a dead cell sitting there. The sperm has all the life. It goes, swims around, picks out an ovum, and penetrates it to give it life. The ovum already has life, and not only does it have life, it's also magnetic. And the reason why the sperm can get to the ovum and penetrate it is because it's magnetic and is drawing the sperm. It's the same thing with the female. She's magnetic, so she's drawing the male to her. He's not just full of energy and she's just a dead body and he just goes around looking for a female and connects with any female who's there. She's a magnet for him. The vulva and the vagina structure are magnetic, and they draw the male to them, the male organ to them, and actually through the activity, like a hand, like grasping, actually pulls the male seed out of the male. So she's just as active and complementary as the male is in the procreative act. Calling Atem or Iusaaset Nebt or Iusaaset Hetepet the hand of Atem is just pointing to the fact that the female is an active participant in the procreative process and has just as much importance and functionality as the male. So when they say she's the hand, when he says, I took my hand and connected with my hand, he's talking about connecting with these female abosom, Asaase, Hetepet, Asaase, Hetepet. Now, sometimes you'll read in certain texts that these, like Asaase Hetepet, is just a form of the other Asaase divinity, and they weren't very, popular divinities. In reality, when you do the research, you'll find that they were popular from the beginning of Ancient Khanit for thousands of years, all over the country, all the way to the fall of Ancient Khanit, to the whites and their offspring. These divinities were always present from the beginning. So these two female abosom were critical to the cosmology and are still critical to the cosmology because we still deal with them. So it's spelled very often Iusaaset, Iusaaset, Nebet and Iusaaset, Hetepet. Nebt means chieftainess, owner, mistress, master. Hetepet, master of the fields, but also meaning the cultivated fields, the produce, the production. And then also said Hetepet also has to do with the chieftainess of the sky, but she's also connected with Atem in that respect when he's the setting sun. So you have these two divinities who are connected to Atem. Sometimes Asaase Hetepet, she'll typically have the crown with the horns and then the solar disk in the middle, but sometimes she will have the scarab, the beetle. And in that sense, she's connected to Kepra, being Keprit, or the female, while Hetepet is connected to Odomankoma or Atem, being the female aspect of that divinity. So the iconography, depending on what's being talked about, the headdresses change. So you have these two divinities. Any questions on that so far? Okay, so we're gonna get into how these divinities show up in our Akhan culture. Let me get a drink right quick, and I'll be right back. Okay. All right. So you have those, and we're going to do a more extensive article on them. But right now, the information in the Odomankoma article it will point you in the right direction. So we see how they show up in Ancient Khanit. Two divinities, one Asaase Hetepet, the other Asaase Hetepet. And the Hetepet, when you look at the Medutu, when you look at the hieroglyphics, it shows Hetep, like Hetep means peace, Hetepet means peace, it also means offerings, but it also is spelled with the symbol connected to the vulva of the female, and that also has to do, again, the vulva is the hand. So when they talk about the hand of Atem, or the hand of the god, or God's hand, they're not talking about the god's hand, meaning he was masturbating. They're talking about the female abosom, Nebt Hetepet, who has a vulva, meaning a hand, her third hand, inside of her name. So they're talking about Atem and Asaase uniting as husband and wife, creating Shu and Tafnu. Sometimes Asaase Nebt Hetepet is called Nebt Heteru, Nebt Hetepet. She has Heteru connected to her name as her title. It's not because this is just another form of the goddess Heteru. Whenever you hear people say, oh, this is just another form of the goddess, when they say Heteru is just a form of Aset, and Aset is just a form of Rait, and Rait is just a form of Mut, and that just means that the people don't understand who these abosom are, so they just start conflating them, because of course they're not, of course the Odwirafo are deliberately distorting, and they don't understand the culture anyway. But our people, when we're reading the information of the whites and their offspring, we often start repeating that foolishness. These are different divinities, different abosom. different forces in nature who have their own functions, just like your different organs. Sometimes a divinity, based on a lineage, will take on a title of another divinity, just like we give our children one of our titles, one of our names. They're not us, they're a different divinity, they're a different ancestor or ancestress who came through us, so they have their own name, but then to show some continuity and some aspect of their character and how they function or how they are to function, we give them an aspect of one of our names. So Het-Heru Nebt Hetepet, or Asaase Het-Heru Nebt Hetepet, there's a connection between Het-Heru dealing with the vulva, dealing with production, fertility, and so forth, and then this Earth Mother divinity. Remember, Atem is operating through the mantle, and Asaase, both Asaase divinities are all connected to the mantle, all three of them. So these are the major primordial Earth divinities, and Het-Heru is the divinity of reproduction, not just inside of our bodies, but in the universe, the reproductive structure in the great divine body of Amen and Amenet, as she gives some of that energy to anybody, any created entity that reproduces, including Nebt Hetepet, that Asaase divinity who reproduces on Earth. So that's why she has that title. Now, when you look in our Akhan culture, you have Asaase, which is Iusaaset in Ancient Khanit, Afua, and then you have Asaase Yaa. If you remember in the section on Afi, which is Afua, Afi in Ancient Khanit is called Het-Heru, the Abosom who governs the planet Afi or Venus. She's Oshun in the Yoruba tradition and so forth. So Asaase Afua is Asaase Het-Heru. And we just said that one of the Asaase goddesses, divinities, is called sometimes Het-Heru Nebt Hetepet, or Asaase Het-Heru Nebt Hetepet. In Ancient Khanit she's called Asaase Het-Heru. In Akhan she's called Asaase Afi or Afua, meaning Asaase Afua. It's the same thing, Asaase Het-Heru or Asaase Afua. So we can identify her as the ancient Asaase Het-Heru Nebt Hetepet, because Nebt Hetepet, again, the symbol inside of her name is actually the vulva and it has to do with reproduction. And then you also have Asaase Yaa, which is the other Asaase, sometimes called Nebt Pet, the other wife of Atem. So you have these two Abosom, Asaase Afua and Asaase Yaa. Remember Afua, and when we have a Kradin, just like you have a Kradin, I have a Kradin, which means our Kra is governed by this particular Abosom. So Asaase, she is a great mother Abosom. One of them, their Kra is governed by Afi, and she carries those characteristics as she's operating through the earth. So since Afi deals with reproduction, creativity, fertility, and so forth, then this particular Asaase or Earth Mother divinity, she's going to be dealing with the same thing as she operates through Earth. So Asaase Afua is the Earth Mother divinity that deals with fertility of the earth, fertility of crops, produce, as well as medicine, creativity, all those kinds of things, reproduction, and things like that. Then you have Asaase Yaa, which means this sister. So there are two sister Abosom, Asaase Afua and Asaase Yaa. This sister, her Kra is governed by the Abosom Yaa. And if you remember Yaa, who was Wachet in Ancient Khanit, she has to do with punishment, she has to do with protection, she has to do with sovereignty, she has to do with independence, she has to do with the protection of the whole, the mind or the nation, things like that. So you'll find that Asaase Yaa governs the same kinds of things. There's the fertility aspect of Asaase Afua dealing with produce, reproduction. Afi or fi means to come forward, to come out, and fe, which is a praise name, means to be birthed or to create or beautiful and things like that. Yaa means to scold, Yaa means to shad, Yaa means to revulse, Yaa means to protect, to wage war, to fight, to punish, all these different things, pain and things like that. When a person, so one deals with production and birth, now you have another one that deals with reception. So when an individual dies, of course, the body goes back into the Earth Mother. They call the Earth Mother sometimes Ampon Yina Moa, basically saying she never refuses a corpse. So she receives that dead body and then transforms it back into its different elements and redistributes the elements back into the system. So it's not about her being the barren earth where Asaase Afua is the fertile earth. It doesn't have anything to do with that in reality. It has to do with, one is dealing with production, expansion, emanation, and one is dealing with reception. Now, the one that deals with production also receives seeds, so plants can eventually give birth. The other one receives corpses, so that things can be transformed, recycled, and so forth. Now, when you're talking about Yaa having to do with protection, remember Yaa, Wachet, having to do, and also dealing with the protection. She's the protectress of royal sovereignty, independence, protection from the invaders who will come in from the north, the centrifugal force that repels invasion and maintains the sovereignty of the nation. And we hear about Asaase Yaa having to do with judgment. Asaase Yaa having to do with stability with regard to the Aman. So when people are having disputes, governmental disputes, village disputes, the elders and eldresses, sometimes the NANASOM will come together when there's no consensus, and they will leave the debate in the center of the town, in the village, and they will go out and say, we're going to go consult with Abrewa, the old woman, the ancient woman, meaning the Earth Mother, so that we can get a result or an answer that everybody has to adhere to. If we can't come up with it through consensus on our own, then the Earth Mother is the final say, the final judge. And then they go deal with the Earth Mother through divination, Adebisa, and then they come back with the answer, and everybody understands that when the Earth Mother speaks, then that's the end of it. So that's where you have Asaase Yaa dealing with the protection of royal sovereignty, the stability of the nation. All those kinds of things are associated with her. So you have Asaase Afua, and then you have Asaase Yaa. Okay, any questions so far on that? Give me one more second. Sorry about that. Okay, so now there's also an aspect of the identity that has to do with their origins that we can show with regard to Kradin. Now, one is Asaase Afua, one is Asaase Yaa. Now, Asaase Yaa, Yaa is Yada, which is Thursday. So, just like when humans have Akhan, adults give birth to children, sometimes they have twins, and the twins are born one after the other, and in certain Akhan groups, the second born is the elder, whereas the firstborn is considered the younger, while some other people will say the firstborn that comes out is the elder and the secondborn is the younger. The reason why some groups say, some Akan people say, the secondborn is the elder, and some Yoruba, they do the same thing, the secondborn is considered the elder, is because in our culture, when you are about to embark upon a new terrain, you send somebody out first, a younger person out first, to assess the terrain, to open the way, and to clear the way for the elder who is going to come and follow. So the elder sends the younger one out of the womb first to clear the way, to assess the terrain, and open the pathway so that the elder can come later. So Asaase Yaa, if someone has twins and the female is born, is pregnant and goes into labor on Yada on Thursday, and remember in our culture, the day does not begin at midnight, the day begins at sunrise. The whites and their offspring have the foolish notion that in the dead of night is the beginning of a new day. In reality, sunrise is the beginning of a new day. So if a female goes into labor and she has twins on Yada night, like 11 p.m., well, once 1 a.m. comes around, she hasn't given birth yet, then she is still, Yada, still Thursday night. 1 a.m. doesn't mean that it's early Friday morning yet. It's still Thursday night because the sun has not risen. Maybe the sun will rise at 6 a.m., that's when it becomes Friday or Fida. But at 1 a.m. it's still Yada or Thursday night. Maybe she's still in labor. 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., and then around 5 a.m. she starts to get ready, and then she gives birth to the first female twin, and it's still, Yada night or Thursday night. So when that twin comes out, her name will be Yaa, because that's the Kradin, that's the soul name. It's an indication that she was associated with the Abosom Yaa pre-incarnation. So she gives birth. And then a little while later, the second twin comes out, but it's right on the cusp, and then it actually switches over, the sun rises, and it actually switches over to Friday or Fida when the second twin comes out, and now her name is Afua or Afua. So you have, Yaa and Afua. And that's the same thing that happens with regard to Asaase Yaa and Asaase Afua. Asaase Yaa, she is born first. It's at night, so therefore she's the one who governs the reception of the corpses at night. It has to do with funerals, sometimes it has to do with the night, those kinds of things. And then when the day dawns, and then the new female Abosom comes into being, it's Friday or Fida, and then she's born when the sun rises. That has to do with the new birth, fertility, and these various different things. That's why there's an Asaase Yaa dealing with the nighttime, not necessarily the barren earth. Sometimes you'll hear individuals say Asaase Yaa deals with the underworld, and Asaase Afua deals with, the surface of earth. It's only partially accurate. They're alluding to the fact that Asaase Yaa receives the corpses and transforms them back into the elements that are needed to enrich the earth, and prepare those elements for another birth. But then Asaase Afua gives birth to produce and things like that. So Asaase Yaa at night, and when it transforms into the daytime, then you have Asaase Afua. That's another reason another manifestation of the value and the nature of their Kradin. Okay. So any questions on that so far with those two Abosom? And again, we're gonna have a article, a more detailed article published dealing with them. We wanted to cover even though they are not Akradinbosom, but we wanted to cover that energy. We dealt with all of the other 7 planets plus Asaase Afua, which makes it 8. Of course, these are the 8 planets of our solar system. So we wanted to have dealing with the complete solar system. And of course, Pluto is not considered a true planet in reality. So this is why we have, the different Abosom associated with the various, 8 planets. Okay, let me see. There's also I don't have the exact link but you can download it just by Googling from the website. So we have the Nyankonton and the Nyankopon articles, and then the Tredriampon Kerera or Cherera articles. So those in connection with the Odomankoma Atum article, in connection with the Afuraka Afuraikai article, specifically part 3 that deals with Ptah, fashioner of the land, where we talk about the different layers of Earth and certain aspects of Ptah's functioning. And then in the Kuku Tumtum, we also talk about Ptah. Let me see. Let me just put that up there for you. So you'll be able to get a great deal